Awesome. Hey everyone, I'm Sasha and I'm a 15-year-old based near Toronto, Canada. Today I want to talk to you about my project to make batteries last longer. So, I love tech and I'm sure most of you guys do as well. And I think there's one thing that's really overlooked when it comes to technology, and that's that just about all of it stands atop this one pillar, batteries, and specifically lithium-ion batteries. The device that you are watching this on, the cell phone in your pocket, the smartwatch on your wrist, all of these things depend on lithium-ion batteries. But we have a problem, and that is with the disposal of these batteries. 95% of them end up in landfills, and here they can cause expensive landfill fires and pollute our soil and water. Not to mention that 1 ton of battery grade lithium alone costs $17,000. So the thing that makes me even more frustrated about this problem is that it's getting worse because we have more and more batteries as we depend more and more on technology. And so we have more and more battery waste. So this graph shows the amount of lithium-ion batteries sold versus the amount of lithium-ion batteries reaching end of life. And what you can see is that both of these are exponential curves, which means that we're going to be hit with a huge wave of battery waste that we have nothing to do with. So after hearing all this, I became really obsessed with finding an answer to this one question. How can we have less battery waste? And as I was thinking about how we could solve this, I was wondering, why do we even have battery waste in the first place? Why can these batteries not just last forever? And what I found is that aside from the basic nature of the chemical reactions that make up these batteries, the main reason that batteries age is because they're used under harsh conditions. So what does this actually look like? Well, there's overcharging, trying to put more power into your battery than it can take, over discharging, trying to take out more power from your battery than it can give, and extreme temperatures, so too hot, too cold. And so if we could prevent the battery from operating inside these harsh conditions, we could make it last much, much longer. So as I researched more and more, I realized that we would need something called a battery management system, or a BMS. And essentially what this BMS does is it prevents our battery from operating inside those harsh conditions. So the way it works is it'll sense a parameter of the battery, say its temperature, and it will determine if that parameter is considered harsh or not. So for example, maybe it'll sense that our battery is too hot. And then what it'll do is it'll counteract that harsh parameter. So in our situation, maybe it would add some cooling fluid to help cool the battery down. And so BMS can be found in just about anything that has a battery. A BMS is actually what tells you when your computer is at 60% charge. And one of the most important things that a BMS does is it predicts battery state of health. So you can think of state of health as like how much the battery has aged. And the reason it's important is because it actually tells us what those harsh conditions are. Because as battery state of health decreases, the safe operating window actually shrinks as well. So we need to know state of health to know what parameters are actually safe to operate in. So crack state of health estimation, and you've just cracked battery longevity. This is where I want to focus. This is where there's room for optimization. So I researched all the state of health estimation methods, and I came across this one called Kalman filtering. Do not worry about all these fancy equations. All you need to know is that Kalman filtering basically makes a prediction, makes a measurement, and then updates its prediction based on that measurement. And so I realized that this would be way more fun if I actually built it out in hardware. So I got an Arduino, I hooked it up to a battery, and I started to collect battery data. So essentially what I'm doing here is I'm generating voltage and current graphs. And what this will allow me to do is it will allow me to determine variables that I need to sub back into my Kalman filter equations. And so this is all fun, but let's take it back to the impact that this could actually have. So if we take a Tesla Model S with a battery that lasts around 240,000 kilometers and costs about $16,000, that works out to about 6.7 cents per kilometer. If we assume that by operating the battery only inside its safe operating area, we can increase the range by 10%. Then we've just dropped the cost by 0.6 cents to 6.1 cents per kilometer. Over the course of that entire battery's lifespan, we just saved $1,200. And the IEA actually predicts that we're going to have 145 million EVs on the road in 2030. So that actually accounts for $174 billion saved. So letting these batteries that are super expensive end up in landfills where they're actually causing a net negative impact on our environment just doesn't make sense. So what we should be doing is we should be using the pre-existing battery management systems that come in just about every battery to get the most out of each and every battery. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sasha. Go take a look at the chat. Lots of great comments there. We have time for one question. If anyone has a question for Sasha.
Sasha, I'm a little confused on what you're doing next with this project. So appreciate the sort of the run through why battery health is important, et cetera, et cetera. You presented the project that you worked on with the Arduino board and sort of assessing like current degradation. But what's next for this project? What comes after
sure.
this sort of replication of that algorithm that you were showing us?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm actually only at the stage of collecting battery data right now because what I need to do is I need to fully discharge that battery to get something called a state of charge open current voltage curve, which essentially will like allow me to almost linearize my Kalman filter equations to my specific battery. And then I have to implement the Kalman filter, which is apparently not that hard. And then I can get state of charge. And then when I get state of charge, I have to plug that into other equations to get state of health. So it's a bit of a complicated process and there's a lot of math, but I'm happy to expand on after as well if that's more what you're asking.
Well, can you help me understand? Like right now, if I open my iPhone and I go to the battery health thing in the settings menu, it'll give me an assessment of the battery health. So what is fundamentally different about what you're working on, and what problem are you trying to solve in the context of like we can already sort of dip in and see battery health relatively easily?
Yeah, so there's like definitely state of health out there. As I was working on this though, one thing that I realized is that it's super, super complicated. So I did have to start somewhere, and that is like currently just trying to replicate that. But I think like the future vision for this is that like as the battery is operating, we have that state of health like metric like front and center. And so we can tailor the operations based on that state of health. So like if you remember when I had like the graph where like the safe operating area is like slanted, if we could use that to like optimize the parameters that the battery is operating in, then I think that that would kind of be where it fit, if that makes sense.
What would you change based on that?
So basically, if you know, like, so say you have like a new battery, right? Maybe it can go from 80% state of charge to like 20%. As that battery ages, that like range is probably going to shrink. And so you might get like 60-40. And so instead, like, I suppose what you could do is like give the user a notification and be like, don't charge your battery less than 40% or else your battery's going to die. Like something like that might be interesting.
So is the hypothesis that the battery, like, because your whole thing is battery waste, right? So is the hypothesis that if you can have these predictions or guidance on how to leverage a battery, then the battery won't have to go to the landfill anymore?
Yeah, so I actually had this in my presentation originally, but I took it out. So essentially, if we look at like reduce, reuse, recycle, when it comes to batteries, recycling and reusing is quite economically challenging right now, and that's because of the disassembly process. So batteries are not optimized for disassembly, they're optimized for efficiency. And so disassembling them is like really expensive and it's really inefficient. And if we wanted to fix that, we'd have to redesign the whole battery process. So I decided that it would make more sense to focus on the reducing aspect.
What if you had data? What if you already had a data set of the IV curve with a bunch of different data points? Would you need to run out the battery, or can you just use that data set? I sent you one on Slack. I don't know if that would be helpful.
Oh, wait. Okay, awesome. Thank you.